Danny, this week oddly reminded me of my daughter because we've been watching Frozen 2 nonstop, and there's a song called Into the Unknown. And this week I feel like that's where we went. We dove into connected TV as I think we've self-described walled garden guys. I basically have no idea how CTV really works. And I think we found the perfect person to explain to us how it works and how it's going to work.
We had Peter Hamilton, who's leading up all ad innovation at Roku. But we knew Peter, James, as the CEO of Tune, as one of the OGs in performance marketing and performance measurement. So we thought nobody else could explain this better than a guy who comes from our world, who's now running things at Connected TV and what is happening over there.
Yeah, totally. I have to admit, I kind of felt like an idiot halfway through this as he explained to me that Roku is actually an operating system, not even a streaming platform. So I thought it was super interesting. He understands this world and the previous worlds probably better than anyone. And he's also just a really good guy.
And hearing him lay out the vision and the future for Connected TV as it stands today, and then as a performance channel, was extremely interesting. And I think everyone listening will probably take away a ton.
Yeah. So let's let him do it. He'll do better than us, but let's get into it.
Today, we welcome on the podcast Peter Hamilton, who is the Senior Director of Ad Innovation at Roku. He was previously the CEO of Tune, which was a global mobile measurement partner that was a leader in performance and measurement across ad platforms like Facebook, Google, and so many more. He spent nearly 20 years in digital marketing and ad tech, and he's a Techstars mentor, as well as an investor, advisor, and board member of a number of companies. So Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let's dive right into it. You spent 20 years in this industry seeing its evolution from nearly the start, but how has performance advertising changed over that time?
Well, it depends on your definition of performance advertising, but I often relate it to what we call direct response. So some sort of a creative that elicits a direct response to act now, right here in the moment. And it's super interesting because really that started on television. If you look back at 1-800 numbers and late night shopping networks, the idea of buy now originated on the TV screen. And as the advent of the internet and personal computers came about, there was a lot that we borrowed from that strategy and that consumer behavior as we brought it onto the PC and, using things like the call to action to drive actual conversions. There was a lot that had to be sorted out on web. If you remember, there was a time where, making a purchase on the web was very, very complicated. And so that had to get simpler. So we had to reduce the friction in the bottom of the funnel. And then, of course, with mobile coming around, and it was the year of mobile for about 10 years before it was actually the year of mobile. And a lot of that had to do with, what is the format and the call to action, the experience, and then also how to reduce this friction, make it super, super easy on mobile to make purchases, to subscribe, to convert in some way. And so we're sort of coming full circle all the way back to television, where TV is no longer, just a linear channel that is affixed, but it operates more like a computer and more like a mobile device. And there's a logged in user experience. There's an operating system. There's the ability to learn about our users and their likes and dislikes and behaviors and make sure we give them the best, most applicable ads, and how it is that we provide more contextual ads in the moment that make sense in their viewing experience. And then also we're solving for that funnel problem, the friction piece. How might you actually convert in a much more seamless and simple way than calling a 1-800 number for television? So, I think of that as sort of, the evolution of the performance marketer, and CTV being one of the next great channels for us to tackle.
And from your point of view, like, Roku, Netflix, these platforms, they've obviously been growing fast for a long time and people love using them. But has there been like some core like technology breakthrough that you see or some adoption that now makes it we're like, okay, we actually are going to help people buy things while they're watching Roku? Or is it more just that consumers are ready for it and like the tie-in of second devices? Like, is there something that makes today like the moment where it's really kind of arrived that you can point to?
Yeah, I mean, this sort of goes back to, and I'll probably talk about this in a minute, but why I came to Roku in the first place is that there's a convergence of many things happening. I do want to note just real quickly for anyone listening that there's often a misunderstanding of like what Roku is, and that we sort of get lumped into like, Roku and Netflix and Hulu like being similar types of animals. And Roku is an operating system for television. That's what Roku is. And yes, we have some of our own content and our own ad-supported television channel. But what's unique about our platform is that it grows because we enable the streaming wars. We're not necessarily competing in the streaming wars. And so many of these, over-the-top services and streaming apps by advertising on Roku to grow on Roku. And as they grow on Roku, the greater is our engagement and adoption across the Roku platform and ecosystem, and therefore Roku grows. And so it's sort of a unique position that's different than most others in the market, even for those that have a device, like Amazon Fire or Google TV. These devices, they also have another business that they're focused on. In the case of Amazon, obviously the largest e-commerce player. In the case of Google, the largest in search, and obviously very motivated for YouTube to be the winning engine, the winning content provider. And, Roku exists and creates and grows our own content really for the benefit of our partners so that they can all grow on our operating system. And that's what we do. We only provide an operating system for TV. We want it to be the best, the cheapest, the simplest, the most engaged, the highest monetizable, and the most accessible platform that there is.
Very helpful, because I think there is a misunderstanding there to some extent, just because, to your point, like just because you guys do create content doesn't mean that you guys are like a publisher, right? Like I think many of us may lump it in there, so it's super helpful context.
Yeah, and then I would just say, in terms of like what's coming about as a result of this, the number one most important thing is that consumers are coming to streaming. So for the first time ever last year, total hours spent viewing streaming versus spent viewing linear became greater. So we just barely eclipsed what linear viewing looked like on streaming. And so with consumers rapidly cutting the cord and moving more and more towards streaming, obviously we see a greater advertising opportunity. So the next piece being, because this is a digital platform and we have a logged in user, we can do more in terms of, contextual, behavioral, and segment oriented targeting on television. And that's a new thing. It's a powerful thing, and it's done in real time, and we can optimize that in real time, and we can optimize that based on actions that occur from the television. And so that's another like critical piece in direct response marketing that unlocked, the personal computer, and unlocked mobile, along the way. And then the last thing is that because so many conversion experiences have been built to accommodate social, the scalability and the APIs that have been created to link and integrate these various systems are far, far, far more advanced than, they were 20 years ago. And you look at Shopify and this recent announcement we had where we integrated with the Shopify checkout experience so that a Shopify merchant can be running an ad on AVOD and on Roku. A user presses OK. They launch a storefront. They proceed to checkout. We pre-populate their credit card details from Roku Pay, and they just hit place order. And the order happens, and they receive their purchase in the mail. All of that integration work is certainly built on the backs of what has happened in desktop and mobile, and in particular, how it relates to search and social.
When you talk about the full funnel, And obviously that direct response component of somebody taking an action, you simplifying that action across Shopify or eventually Amazon potentially, and just making that conversion a lot easier, more seamless, and being able to measure it. I think over the last several years, we've seen the complexity of measurement and grow to a level I don't think we've ever seen. I mean, Apple certainly accelerated that with some of their privacy changes. Cookie apocalypse, as many people have dubbed it, is accelerating some of that. But now we're hearing about data clean rooms. We're hearing about new pixels across different platforms, media mix modeling, just a lot of different measurement techniques that I think folks aren't as clear as maybe when you were running Tune, that there were a handful of trusted partners that you trusted the data as an independent party outside of a Facebook or a Google, a self-attributing network. And so I guess what do you see from a Roku standpoint, but just as a broader industry standpoint, like measurement's getting more complex. Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Kind of where does this lead us to in the next few years?
Oh, whether it's good or bad is maybe not for me to say. It's happening. So we can deal. It's the same argument with AI. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, does it matter? It's coming. So are we going to do good things with it or bad things with it? I think is the answer to that question. There is, first of all, you're of course going to see more and more conversion experiences go to first party so that the purchase could happen in stream, like in the middle of something or while you're still on TikTok, while you're still on Instagram, while you're still on a Roku device. That obviously helps very much in, conversion measurement, optimization against those conversions and improved capabilities. We are investing heavily in our clean room product. It is an area where, video is so powerful. In many cases, you can drive very significant conversions, even without all of that purchase on TV kind of mentality. And in some cases, it doesn't even make sense for the user experience. Maybe I'm, subscribing to a health and wellness app or something like that. I need to go to the app, I need to download it. It needs to be on my phone. So, we need to be able to measure the efficacy of those things. And certainly a clean room is a great investment strategy. The interesting thing about a television is that it doesn't move around. It stays put generally, and it has a persistent IP address. And if the IP address in the home changes, the television is usually the first to know. And so, of course, we can, build our device graph over time and recognize, especially users that have like the Roku remote and they're interacting with their television, and we can improve, conversion between those two pieces. So, there's interesting opportunity and interplay between second device. We call it second device with the television being first. And I think, we're well positioned to continue to grow that graph and also that interaction with consumers using their secondary devices in a way that is also more first party long term. All of that said, marketing is not just digital, it's lots of other things. It's out of home, it's word of mouth, it's influencer driven. There's so many parts of it that are sort of apples and oranges to each other. And I do believe that there's an opportunity for advanced incrementality measurement at a always on type of scale that allows for marketers to see what actually moves the needle up and what doesn't, what's really providing new customers in the door on a regular basis, and not just doing that through experimentation and like turning things off and on again and that sort of thing, but having some more, smart, maybe AI driven modeling that can give us some of that insight as we go along. Because at the end of the day, we just want the total number of sales or conversions to go up. And as long as we know what is impacting that, even if it's very directional, it can be the most powerful lever in our marketing or our measurement practice.
Maybe something similar there. I mean, you guys Roku has kind of led the charge in some ways of, breaking down this idea of kind of walled gardens to make that measurement more accessible. You guys have partnered with Best Buy. You mentioned the partnership with Microsoft, and you're sharing this data.
So Walmart Connect to their retail media network. Yeah, I mean, we're sharing it both ways in partnership here so that we can connect to those conversions.
And I think, I mean, historically, platforms, both operating system and publishers, have been very protective of kind of their walls and not sharing that data in and out. And you guys have taken a different approach, and I think it's really interesting, kind of leading that in the industry.
I think it has to do with the fact that we're not a publisher first. We do some publishing, and that does help to grow our platform and also expand the total opportunity for advertising supported streaming, which I can go on for hours about how incredible that growth has been. But at the end, we see ourselves as a platform, an operating system, a digital front end, a connection to all of these other points. And we're not trying to win all of those other businesses, right? We're not trying to be the largest e-commerce platform or retailer or search engine or even, the competing in the leagues of Netflix, right? On the content side, we really are trying to provide this best case value add to the consumer experience for discovering all types of content across all of these providers. So in a way, our fundamental values and vision sort of align with being a very unbiased, more open platform partner.
And given your role just leading up, ad innovation and your track record and just your previous time running Tune, do you think a lot of like the direction that you guys are doing of like being open and trying to make measurement easy to understand, basically not trying to be this like pain in the ass walled garden, does a lot of that come from your experience at Tune? Do you think that's like, it's like kind of do you have any kind of point of view of just like, what it could have been, I guess, if the other walled gardens could have, not for you guys as a walled garden, but if the other
totally
quasi operating systems could have behaved better?
Yeah, I definitely, in growing the mobile ad ecosystem, we always wanted it to be as open and democratized as it possibly could be. At the same time, I understand that it's important for people to protect customer data and consumer privacy and these things. But, it probably has something to do with why I was so attracted to Roku, that it really is a platform first approach versus, wanting to own the entire funnel of all user, activity, but become a powerful digital front end for so many other businesses to build on top of. It's one of the reasons why we were able to build such a strong partnership with someone like Walmart. They have something we're never going to build, but at the same time, we want to figure out how do we provide the absolute best consumer experience? How do we unlock that consumer experience for all types of advertisers that supply through Walmart? And that means, being open to the opportunity. And yeah, I definitely prefer an open platform way of life.
And because it's an open platform, how do you guys think about just changing consumer habits, right? Because you're not constrained to creating a certain type of content. I think the Writers Actors Guild and the Screen Actors Guild right now probably doesn't affect you guys quite as much. But as generational shifts happen where people are watching YouTube Shorts, YouTube, TikTok, just different types of content, how do you guys think about integrating a lot of that and then starting to build ad products around these different types of content deliveries?
Well, I will plug David Eilenberg, who runs Roku Originals, that he is really a curious person thinking about what is the future of the big screen and what sorts of content is going to grow there, and what is our role in helping to facilitate short form content or maybe even user generated content, influencer content for sure. And he's out in market talking to everybody that you would imagine to think about what that future holds and what it looks like. And I think we're in very, very capable hands there. It's slowly evolving, even our Roku Originals slate and how we think about that is evolving over time. The Roku channel and how we incorporate, third parties and partners is continuing to evolve over time. Fast channels are becoming super, super popular. So being able to launch, live consecutive content that you can watch always on in the Roku channel, you would imagine would extend very well into short form content or influencer based content. And we certainly have our eyes on that. It also, one of the things in, testing the performance of, what we call action ads, but the idea that you would, tap on an ad and get a text, or you would tap on an ad or, convert or check out. One of the things that we've learned is that very authentic, influencer-oriented content on television is very effective. Where the fourth wall is broken, the influencer is talking about why this product is so great for them and what they've learned about it. They have a call to action, early and in the midpoint of this experience, and so that also gives us an indication that users or viewers are hungry for that kind of authentic content on the big screen. And you certainly see that play out with YouTube. And I do believe that it'll be an area that grows significantly on CTV, and we hope to take part in it.
And are you seeing like hardcore DR advertisers embracing it? Like, are the gaming app install, are these guys coming? Are they still skeptical? And then then also just like, are you also seeing the big brands start to get more direct response oriented, or is it still for them like a branding channel?
Yeah, I would say that CTV seems to be a buzzword in the performance marketer ecosystem right now. Certainly, if you were at this past MAU, it was in every single meeting and every single person seemed to be talking about CTV. I would still say it's sort of like, the year 2012 in mobile, where there are a few that are really cracking it and really like pushing in hard and are seeing CPAs that really make sense for them. They're seeing lift from their buys on CTV on their channels such as Facebook and Google and others, right? So it has this amplifying effect and this incremental effect across everything that they're buying on. And especially in a time where, for many, their Facebook CPAs are not what they were, and they're looking for alternative channels. They're looking for diversification. They need to find what is the next big user acquisition channel for them. CTV seems to be on the tip of everyone's tongue. And so, yeah, I would say there are still, only a few dozen performance marketers that have really cracked it and are really exploding in CTV and doing an incredible job. And then there are others that are, starting to move and form into that direction. And, it reminds me of, the mobile industry where, for a long time we thought, well, for sure, people are going to want to do performance advertising for mobile apps. Like, surely this is going to be a thing. And it took a lot longer than we thought. And it took a few of those leaders in the marketing industry. And for mobile, that was games. And in particular, for us at Tune, it was Kabam Games with Kingdoms of Camelot. They started to buy across many different channels, upwards of 60, 70 different advertising channels back in 2012. And they became the highest grossing app in the iTunes store for that year. And then suddenly everyone goes, oh, maybe I need to start investing more in this. And then we don't have the same sort of app store rankings for the broader performance ecosystem, but we are seeing that those that are leaning into CTV are seeing some of the most success in their cross-channel opportunity.
Now that you're on the Roku side, obviously you have a really strong background in mobile and web. I mean, you're one of the few people probably in the industry that has had extensive experience across all of these different mediums. And so given everything kind of what are you most excited about in ad tech and MarTech today?
Oh man, that's a good question. I do really get excited about this influencer space and on the big screen and how that plays out. What is shopping television in the United States? We know it's blowing up in Asia in various ways, especially on smaller devices. But what does that look like for us here? the interplay also between the television and the second screen is still very, very early. And when that starts to feel magical and connected in a powerful way, I get really excited about that. What does social behavior look like with the big screen? Is another one that has not been solved, and I get really interested in. And then, of course, we do have to talk about AI, and everyone seems to be running toward AI. Ad creative is one of the first executions, and of course, there's AI being used to improve contextual and behavioral targeting and that sort of thing. But when you start thinking about commercials being made with AI, and then you start extending that to shows, and you start extending that to movies, where in the world are we going? Because there could be hundreds of thousands of new incredible films launched every day, and the problem set of what to watch becomes exacerbated by an order of magnitude. And I think platforms like Roku sit in the middle of that equation, what to watch. And so I think that there's a enormous opportunity there. And I think with the commoditization of content to some degree, that it's easier, cheaper, faster for everyone, that ad supported will actually continue to grow. Already viewers are flocking to AVOD or advertising video on demand because they have 3, 4, 5 subscriptions. They've watched everything in those libraries that they want to watch, and they want more, and they want it always on, and they want to just turn the TV on, and they want it to go. And so AVOD is rapidly growing even now with the content that we have. But imagine that explodes even further, and the willingness to subscribe or pay for premium content when there's so much incredible, entertaining, and valuable content that has flooded the supply in the future. It seems like alternative means of monetization will be important.
It's funny because I remember we were at Snapchat and we were just launching the ads API, and we're looking for a set of advertisers. And, a lot of the big brands were actually a little skeptical, and even like some of the e-commerce ones. And it ended up being, I think, Dana, if I remember, was like free credit check and like these like super, just like sophisticated DR advertisers were the ones that were most willing to try out the format. And I feel like in CTV, it's like, ironically, just someone's got to figure out infomercials and QVC. And, there's a huge business there. I mean, not in like a negative way, but just in terms of like the format of how that actually all is going to work. And it feels like Roku's probably the one that gets to play a pretty big hand in how that all goes. So that's pretty interesting.
Another concept I like to talk about that relates to what you mentioned is there a future where the way that content monetizes becomes more deep with individual viewers versus wide across many viewers? That perhaps a movie in the future could make more money with 10,000 very devoted fans than millions of people going to the box office. And, we already have seen mechanisms like this, of course, like in the world of NFTs and art. That's been interesting, where you have collectors and holders of this art that are willing to pay hundreds or thousands of dollars to take part in the journey of this artist, and are monetizing at such a greater rate because of how much they love this art. How does that translate into content down the road? And I think the fast approach that many have taken is merch and live events and things like that to go deeper with those smaller audiences. But I think we'll see more digital relationships that grow between content creators and viewers in a way that allows monetization to be higher for those that are true fans and want to go very deep with that content.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had on the podcast recently one of the co-authors of ActivityPub, which is like the open source protocol that Threads is built out of. And basically they're trying to build like a Fediverse of all these social networks. And part of the protocol's author's point is we should have smaller, tighter social networks that are easier to spin up. And if you do that, you may be able to have deeper monetization relationships. You could effectively probably have higher CPMs, things of that nature. So like it definitely that drives with what you're saying there. A different context, but I still feel like it's analogous.
Well, and sort of looping back to your earlier question about brands and how they think about performance, reach has been like the thing for major, Fortune 100 brands who already have large audiences, and they just need more of those very, very large audiences and the right points of consideration. And so for those companies who are built in that way and have that sort of business model, it continues to be the biggest it factor for them. They literally need their message into larger audiences. And many of the conversion points, for CPG or QSR or these, sorts of things are, in store or in person and tying the television to the purchase experience there. We can do some stuff in clean rooms and things like that, but ultimately they are able to see the top line move when they do these big brand buys into streaming and also still in linear. So I don't see that like going away anytime soon. In fact, for streaming, it's going to continue to grow, especially as more and more dollars that are still spent. By the way, there are more there are more viewing hours on streaming than linear, but there are more advertising dollars on linear still, right? So that movement toward streaming is still going to take some time. But yeah, I do believe in the long run, over the next 10 plus years, there will, especially as some of those largest brands reach, incredible saturation, at the end of the day, they'll have to drive sales. And you'll see more and more move in that direction.
Yeah. It's a little bit outside of like CPG, maybe more on retail. But as you're talking, I was just thinking about like fast fashion and how like those platforms, like when you could marry like AI, fast fashion, and really, really great targeting on streaming, like you could become an incredibly efficient business, right? And be really hard for like a traditional retailer they'd have to adopt. Like it's kind of like to your point about the mobile moments where it's like everyone's now a direct response advertiser. It's like it really would change a lot of it's crazy to think how it all unfold.
Yeah. So these brands, and I oftentimes like bring things back to art and how art works and functions and is sold and connected to audiences over time. But these brands and retailers specifically, as they interact with CTV, they're sort of like curators. They're bringing together all of what they see to be some of the best products, the best fast fashion in your example, or whatever that might be. And, in some ways they're like a gallery, they're like an auction house. Like they're the ones that, are amassing those things into one place. And, that's the power of a retailer, right? You walk into the store and have all the things that you really kind of want or that you need for your household. And so that, I certainly D2C will continue to grow as people think about one-to-one purchasing. But the role of the retailer is a very powerful one. And that I do believe will continue through the ages.
And so, Peter, before we start to close this out, we like to end with kind of a series of questions, get your quick response on them. So we'll jump right into that. But I think, one thing that we've talked a lot about today, but like CTV is a term that gets thrown around a lot. What's the biggest misconception or thing that advertisers get wrong about CTV?
Well, I do think people depending on what sort of advertiser you are, you might have different misconceptions. The number one would be that on the brand side, that I should just take my linear and slap it onto streaming. And there's just so much more you can unlock. There's so much more you could target. There's so much you could, define your message per target. You can link this to measurement and outcomes and follow incrementality. There's just so much more for you to be digging into. And there's still a lot of linear spends that are just sort of like just coming on and not really thinking about how to change their practice and grow it on this new medium. I would say on the performance side, there are many that still perceive CTV as being very expensive. And it is true that CPMs generally are a little bit higher in CTV than they are in digital. They're also this incredible leaned back like power experience, not like scrolled swiftly fast or skipped quickly. And so it has a very different impact on the user. So I would argue that those CPMs are justly a little bit more expensive. But also where a lot of, performance marketers get hung up is around creative, that they need to produce, television worthy creative. And what we have found in our testing is that simple is often better, authentic, and it can even be shot on an iPhone and work very, very well on television. And I think that's an important lesson both for performance and for brand. Could I shoot 10 different video ads and test them all against each other because it's so much cheaper to do, just like I do in YouTube today, right? Or I do on other social channels. Yes, I do believe you should be thinking about it that way.
It's interesting because I think we had a very similar experience at Snap where vertical video was new at the time, full screen audio on, and a lot of folks didn't know how to approach the creative, thought it had to be really highly produced or it had to be pulled from linear, and it took a while to adopt, and behaviors changed before people started to test it in the right way. And so, to the next question, I think it relates. What's the inflection point for the mass market of direct response performance advertisers, SMBs, to start taking advantage of connected TV?
I do think generally marketers like to follow, who they think are the most innovative in their ecosystems. And so as those stories play out, people see some of the most successful performance marketers finding gains on CTV. That's what, causes the following mentality into the channel. There are lots of best practices that, could help and help establish, how campaigns really should be run and what that should look like. But yeah, it's one of those things that, like any new thing, it takes the innovators to press in first, and then we'll see a larger body of folks flock in that direction.
Well, and good thing for you guys, unlike Snap, you're not in the position where Instagram can rip off your formats. That was the the breaking point for us, where we finally got people to do it. So you guys are in a better spot than that.
Well, and I also think, borrowing from things like on social is the auction mentality on CTV, and getting really great at that, so that there are always little pockets of cheaper inventory and things that performance marketers can find. Those things are also super powerful and make performance marketers feel like they're doing their jobs. And so I think, as people start to discover those nooks and crannies, they'll be able to open up new arteries of conversions.
And so we'll end it on a more fun question. But seeing that you spent so much time in your career in mobile and now Roku, what's your favorite TV show? And I'm going to throw in a bonus in there. What was your favorite mobile game during your time in mobile?
Oh man, I would say, my favorite TV show right now is got to be The Bear. Man, it gives me a heart attack, but I absolutely love it. I'm really into cooking myself. You can follow me on Hamilton Cuts on TikTok, or I'm a quasi meatfluencer. You can even purchase my chef's knife that I've created. But anyway, I absolutely I love it, and I guess I'm a glutton for the stress of it. On the mobile game side, one of our early big customers certainly was Supercell, and Clash Royale was probably the one I played the most and really enjoyed. So I would have to give that up to Supercell.
Nice. And I think Supercell was probably one of those early first adopters of starting to do linear and connected TV. I saw them everywhere.
That's right. They're leaders in the category again. And so we want to lift up those marketer stories. I hope you guys are doing that on this podcast, showing people they're having success on CTV, and that's how an industry grows.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you joining us today. And, where can anyone listening learn more about Roku advertising and learn more about you?
Sure. I'm pretty active on Twitter. So Peter Hamilton on Twitter. You can DM me, and that's a great way to get in touch. And you can do LinkedIn too. It's just the volume on LinkedIn is a little bit crazier. And otherwise, go to advertising.roku.com and you can learn about some of our things there. We do have a beta right now that's going for our ads manager, which is basically a self-service CTV product. You just log in, put a credit card on file, load up your video, and start running on TV. And it's really, really cool. I'm very excited about its future potential. You're getting a little bit of a sneak peek of this because we haven't really talked about it broadly. We really are in a beta, but anyone that would like to try it is an open beta, and happy to help direct you, or you should be able to find it through the website if you work hard enough.
Okay. We'll include those links in the show notes, but Peter, this is awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Before you go, we need your help. If you enjoyed this week's episode of Taking Inventory, then subscribe or rate wherever you listen to the podcast. And while you're at it, please share this episode or your favorite episode with a friend. We'll be back next week with another episode of Taking Inventory.